So James Gunn has a habit of drastically changing characters when adapting them from the comics into his movies, to the point where sometimes they are so completely different that it's hard to even call them an adaptation. While other times he adapts them so perfectly, either visually or in their characterization, that you'd think they just leapt right up off the page. He definitely leans towards the former, though. So, as a big DC fan, I've been waiting on pins and needles to see how well or poorly he was going to adapt some of my favorite characters in all of DC Comics into the first movie of the DCU, Superman. And now that it's out, we've gotten a glimpse of what DC on film is likely going to look like for the next few years. Did Gunn adapt these characters well and with respect to the source material? Or did he just make up a bunch of OCs and toss names on them like he has in the past? Well, let's take a look by applying the kryptonite-resistant 3C system to rate every DC character adapted into Superman, and then rank them from the least accurately adapted to the most, to see how much of a DC world this is really going to be. For those of you not in the know, those 3Cs are costume, character, and continuity. Costume rates a character's outfit or costume, their overall look, and their superficial physical characteristics. Character rates their personality, their relationship with others, and their powers or abilities. And continuity rates their origin story, their iconic moments, and their overall place in the world, universe, or timeline. And as always, a character's placement on this ranking is not a commentary on if they're a good or bad character in this movie, only how well or poorly they were adapted from the DC Comics source material in comparison to other DC characters in this movie. So without further ado, let's start our ranking faster than a speeding bullet with the character who ranked as the absolute most poorly adapted character from DC Comics into James Gunn's Superman, starting with probably not who you're expecting at number 33, Tiger Man. And Tiger Man. In the movie, Dean and Desmond Farr were twin brothers and two of the scientists working for Lex Luthor in his plans to kill Superman. In the comics, they are not scientists and have no connection to Luthor, but they are twins. They shared a connection that let each one of them know when the other one was in pain. Dean had left to go discover the Valley of the Tigers in India. When Desmond felt something was wrong, he traveled there as well, and learned that his brother had been transformed into a Tiger Man after drinking a magical potion. Though due to taking it in the wrong way, he was left a mindless beast. Desmond took the potion as intended and also turned into a Tiger Man, but maintained his human intellect in order to track his brother down and give him the antidote. Years later, Dean died off screen in some unspecified accident, but Desmond retained the ability to transform into a Tiger Man at will. These are not big characters. They are the definition of obscure, especially Dean. So where in the hell did Gunn even get these names from to toss onto two random borderline background characters who do not turn into tigers and likely never will? Well, I assume it's because Desmond worked with Gardner during his time as Warrior. So likely while looking into characters associated with Gardner, he found these two? Let's hope this is some kind of convoluted deep-cut secret setup for a Warrior spin-off show featuring a team of two Tigermen teaming up with Gardner, but I kind of doubt it, so I'll just remain confused why these names were used at all. Alright, off to a good start. Next up at 32 we have, of course, who you were all expecting at the bottom of this list, the iconic and well-known villain, Combator. Lawrence, or Larry, Chin was another of the scientists assisting Luthor in the movie. In the comics, he's also not a scientist, but he was an employee of Lex Luthor. Under the identity of Combator, he attacked a theater threatening to kidnap Lois Lane in order to lure out Superman and cause a great deal of damage in the ensuing fight. In a plan of Luthor's to convince Cecilia Windward that so-called heroes like Superman were just charlatans that humanity shallowly flocks to, in a tie-in comic to the absolutely god-awful Millennium event. It's later shown he had been empowered through a mind and body altering procedure under LexCorp, and due to the strain it took on his heart, he died soon after the battle. Nothing similar, but at least this name makes sense as one to grab up since he is connected to Luthor. Anywho, now, no more trolling. At 31, we come to who you expected to see at the bottom of this. Ultraman. Ultraman in comics is an evil alternate universe version of Superman. Depending on when you're reading, he's either from one of the iterations of Earth 3 or an antimatter universe. His continuity differs from version to version quite a bit, but the simple description is that he is Kal-El, who also came to Earth from Krypton, and gains godlike powers when exposed to shards of kryptonite. Powers he used not to become Earth's savior, but its greatest villain, conquering the world alongside the other powerful members of the crime syndicate of America. There's plenty more to go into, but there's really no point, because the character in this movie is not that character at all. In the movie, Ultraman is a clone of Superman created by Lex Luthor in his battle to discredit and destroy him. The clone is much stronger than Superman, but much more simple-minded, trained to follow Luthor's every command. The only reason he ranks higher than the two below him is the fact that he has the same logo, similar powers, and because Ultraman and Superman do look the same, he's technically does kind of look like he's supposed to. I wasn't sure if I should rate this character as a bad version of Ultraman or a bad version of the character he's obviously supposed to be, the imperfect Superman clone named Bizarro. But since besides being a clone, he shares very little in common with Bizarro, and the movie decided to call him Ultraman, I'll defer to its naming. However, I think it's very likely that Ultraman escapes from that black hole he got thrown into at the end of the movie, all messed up and backwards thinking, so we'll see in a video for a potential sequel someday how he rates to Bizarro, hopefully. Alright, and at 30 we've got Rick Flag Sr. I actually already ranked the DCU version of Rick Flag Sr. back in my Creature Commandos video. If you want a slightly more in-depth review of him, you can check that one out. And in that show, he was already pretty much nothing like the World War II fighter pilot comic counterpart, except for being the father of Rick Flag. Since he was already nothing like the comic version, it makes sense he'd keep evolving into his own character. In the movie, we see him working alongside the Secretary of Defense in monitoring Superman's activities. However, he does rank a teeny bit higher here than he would in the Creature Commandos one, because here he has dark hair like he does in the comics instead of the gray hair he had in the show. And psst, by the way, Rick Flag is on this list because of the minor changes in his connection to the government and his new hair color. Usually returning characters from previous movies don't get on these unless they go through some kind of change, so sorry, you ain't gonna see Peacemaker. Now, surprisingly already exiting the so different that they're not even remotely the same character section and entering the so different they're barely the same character section, starting at 29 with Engineer. Both the comic and movie versions of Engineer are named Angela Spica and are injected with nanotechnology to gain abilities. Otherwise, they are completely different from each other. In the movie, she was a former special operative who agrees with Lex that Superman is a threat to the world, so agreed to let him inject her with nanites that she can form into anything she can imagine, and can interact with computers and other technologies, including the Kryptonian tech in Superman's fortress. Her nanites are black and form into a black bodysuit around her, leaving her head exposed, though she does also cover part of that at times. In the comics, though, Engineer was a hero and member of the Authority, a team that originated from a separate company from DC, Wildstorm. Until DC bought up Wildstorm and very poorly incorporated its Wildstorm heroes into the DC universe, screwing most of them up in the process, as DC is wont to do with such things. In the Wildstorm continuity, Angela Spica was a genius who gained access to the notes of the original Engineer, a member of a group called the Changers, who aimed to force a utopian society in the world against its will until they were stopped by Stormwatch. Angela used his research to create and replace her blood with nanotechnology, completely changing her into a machine-human hybrid. Instead of wearing an outfit, she coats her entire body in this silvery liquid machinery, greatly increasing her physical abilities, and making her virtually naked, which is likely why they pussed out on going this route in the movie. Using her new abilities as a founding member of the Authority, an incredibly powerful super team that polices the world. In the DC Comics version of her continuity, she's not a member of the Authority, but of Stormwatch. While Angela and the Authority of Wildstorm would openly challenge and topple corrupt governments and fight apocalypse-level threats on the world stage, in the DC version she was no longer that badass, instead serving in the secret organization Stormwatch, working behind the scenes against much less ambitious and more boring threats, and disappearing into obscurity since that series' cancellation. All three versions, though, are able to transform the nanites within them into any shape, including things like a jetpack and a variety of weapons, and are able to interface with advanced technologies. The dreadlocks she has in the movie are kind of similar to the machine dreadlocks she has in the comic version when in costume, but they're a lot less cool. And in the original Wildstorm comics, Engineer was heroic and empathetic, while in the DC version she is much colder and more mechanical. The movie version, though, is neither. She's rage-filled, and instead of being an independent leader like the comic version, she's a lackey manipulated by and completely dedicated to Lex Luthor. Alright, now to 28 with Flo Crowley. In the comics, Flo Crowley is a relative of Amanda Waller's who worked as a mission coordinator for Task Force X. In the DCEU, she was also this, though we don't know if she's related to Waller in there, and was the one who stopped Waller from killing the team when they went out to fight Starro. And now we see her in the DCU, where she's one of the government people speaking with Lex Luthor, where she's referred to as Director Crowley. So either turning against Waller has actually helped her career quite a bit, or things are slightly different in this version of the universe. We'll have to wait and see. Though either way, she's really not that much like her comic counterpart, who after long wanting to go out on field missions, eventually got the opportunity and was quickly killed. At 27, we move up to Cheryl Kimble. In the comics, Cheryl Kimble is the head of LexCorp's space program, who's obsessed with researching newly discovered aliens no matter the risks. And by aliens, I mean the aliens, as in xenomorphs from the Superman/Aliens crossover back in the 90s. In the movie, she's not involved in the space program, but does work under Lex Luthor as one of the members of operations in his plans against Superman. In the comics, though she started out recklessly pursuing scientific research for its own sake, by the end she realizes the danger the xenomorphs pose to Earth. And while she goes through no such arc in this movie and looks completely different, I think we can very confidently assume that her inclusion here means the next Superman movie's villain is going to be 100% an army of xenomorphs. Anyways, now at 25 with Otis. So Otis was a character originating from the classic Richard Donner Superman film as the bumbling henchman of Mr. Luthor. And pretty much ever since, whenever Lex Luthor is adapted into a cartoon or in live action, there will almost always be at least one scene where someone who works for him is named Otis in reference to that iconic film, though usually a lot more badass. And this movie is no exception. Otis is the member of Luthor's team who pulls the lever to detach his command center from the rest of the building when Metropolis is being destroyed. Like the original, this Otis is a portly man, but besides that and working for Luthor, they share nothing in common in looks or personality. At 25, we've got Amanda McCoy. In the comics, Amanda McCoy was an employee of Lex Luthor's who uncovered evidence that Superman was actually Clark Kent. Though when she presented this evidence to her boss, she was fired for wasting his time with such an asinine theory. In the movie, she's another one of the employees working on his anti-Superman operation. We see her for about 2 seconds, but she's a named character from comics, so here she is. And at 24, we have Annie Jessup. In the movie, she's another employee working under Luthor as part of his task force to destroy Superman. In the comics, Annie Jessup also worked under Luthor as part of a task force, but this one's purpose was searching for and researching information on the black rings that had recently risen the dead during the Blackest Night. The major difference being that in the comics she works in the field, while in the movie she works in operations behind the scenes. At 23, we leave the characters who work for Luthor section of this list and move up to Superman's pal, Jimmy Olsen. In the comics, Jimmy Olsen was a young office boy and later photojournalist working for the Daily Planet. He's a close pal with Superman, who gave him a special signal watch he can call the Man of Steel with in times of emergency. In the movies, he's a reporter at the Daily Planet, though whether he's a photojournalist or not is not shown. Like the comics, he's a colleague and friend to both Lois Lane and Clark Kent, though he's a lot closer to their age than he ever is in the comics. His sense of style changes drastically over the decades, though he's most well known for his fondness for bow ties, which is not represented in this movie. And while the comic version is Superman's pal, the movie version doesn't seem to have a relationship with him, so does not appear to have his signal watch, and even subtly criticizes Superman's actions a couple times. The movie version is portrayed as a comically plain-looking ladies' man, and while this isn't really officially an aspect of him in the comics, he has had a number of incredibly unlikely relationships, including with Lois's sister, a fifth-dimensional imp, an alien godbug, and even a high-ranking member and recruiter of a cult. Anyways, at 22 we reach Maxwell Lord. Both the comic and movie versions of Maxwell Lord are wealthy businessmen who organized and funded versions of the Justice League. In the comics, this was Justice League International, a group answerable to and sponsored by the United Nations, while in the movie, it's the still-forming and likely to be renamed Justice Gang, operating out of the Hall of Justice. Lord has gone through many changes and retcons over the years, though initially portrayed as a self-serving businessman and con man who does start to develop a conscience over time. He was later developed into a psychotic anti-metahuman supervillain, able to control the minds of other people. The movie seems to be going for the earlier version of the character, though he could become the latter later. The movie version has a very different look than Lord's ever had in the comics, being a lot more disheveled than his usual clean-cut look. And what little bits we see of his personality, he seems quite different as well. Since we know so little about him, I won't go too into detail on the comic version, and we'll save it for when we learn more about the guy in the future. So let's zip up to 21 with Hawkgirl. So, Hawkgirl's continuity. Whoo boy. Well, luckily, since she does so little in this movie, I won't have to go too far into detail on that convoluted mess. Alright, let's give this the old college try. So the simple version is, in ancient Egypt, Prince Khufu and his beloved Sheara were murdered and cursed into a cycle of reincarnation that continues into this day, usually dying just as they find each other and their love in that lifetime is about to reach its zenith. After reincarnating as Sheara Sanders and marrying Khufu's reincarnated Carter Hall, they operated as the Golden Age heroes Hawkman and Hawkgirl. Skipping a bunch of irrelevant, convoluted stuff, eventually Shiera died. Instead of reincarnating as normal, though, her soul accidentally entered the body of her recently unalived grandniece, Kendra Saunders, inheriting all of Kendra's memories. Due to this glitch, when Hawkman returned to life after some equally convoluted stuff, he retained memories of all of his past lives, but Kendra did not, creating drama between the two, though she did go on to try to forge her own identity as the new Hawkgirl. Things get really convoluted after that, and it'd take a whole video to sift through the mess that is the Hawks, but for now, that's the Cliff Notes version. In the movie, we don't know anything about her backstory. There are claims outside of the movie that she is reincarnated, but until we see something stated on screen, I take nothing as fact, because that stuff can always change. The movie version is laid back and casual out of costume, and brutally violent and even willing to kill in costume. Though the Hawks are more brutal than other heroes, Kendra isn't usually explicitly a murderer. I could be generous and say this aspect was taking inspiration from the more militaristic and violent Thanagarian version of Hawkwoman, but I doubt it. Her helmet is somewhat close to versions she's had in the comics, but missing the black around the eyes that she usually has, which I think is a bit cooler. Her costume in the movie is much lamer, sadly, replacing the cool midriff exposing green and yellow outfit with just a crappy version of Mr. Terrific's costume like all of the Justice Gang wear. And while Kendra's hair is usually short in the comics, Shiera's hair is usually about the length it is in the movie. Both versions fight with the mates, and both versions use wings to fly. In the comics, her wings are a harness she wears, using the unique properties of nth metal in that harness to defy gravity. In the movie, we do not yet know the details of how she flies, but her wings are also likely a harness she wears, since she doesn't seem to have them while relaxing with the Justice Gang. Whew, alright, that was a lot. Let's get out of there before I start talking about split souls or reincarnation through time and space, and move up to 20 with Supergirl. Supergirl in both comics and the movie is Kara Zor-El, the cousin of Kal-El. She's another character who's been subjected to many reboots across the years, even being wiped from existence for decades. She's had many personalities and portrayals in that time, sometimes an innocent all-American girl, sometimes a rebellious outsider. One thing she is usually not portrayed as, though, is a drunken and disrespectful party girl as she is at the end of the movie. Supergirl's had a lot of different styles in her outfit as well, with the version seen in the movie looking very close to her classic style costume and just with more of those random details tossed in that seem to be so popular in movie costumes. We know very little about her in the movies so far, so it's difficult to judge any of the details or make too many assumptions about her, but specifically, she does look immediately like Supergirl. One major change we do see, though, is that Krypto is portrayed as her dog in the movie, while in the comics, he's Superman's dog. At 19, we come to Mr. Terrific. In comics, Mr. Terrific is Michael Holt, the third smartest man in the world. After the death of his wife, he felt he had nothing to live for, but after an intervention from the Spectre, who told him about the Golden Age hero Terry Sloan, aka Mr. Terrific, Michael Holt felt inspired to dedicate his currently purposeless life towards a greater good, continuing the legacy as the modern age version of Mr. Terrific, with the words fair play emblazoned on his jacket and guiding his actions as they had been on the originals. He found his way to the current-day Justice Society of America, a team the original Terrific had served on years prior, even eventually serving as its chairman. He's invented many devices to aid him, including his T-spheres that he can remotely control to serve as cameras, weapons, and many other functions, and his T-mask, which makes him invisible to all electronic detection and gives him other abilities as well. The movie version looks pretty much exactly like the comic version, with one minor difference being his pupils are visible. However, when looking through his T-spheres remotely, his eyes look like they do in the comics. While in the comics his costume is of his own design, in the movie version it seems to be the style of costume shared by the other members of the Justice Gang as well. In the comics, he has served alongside Hawkgirl as part of the Justice Society and alongside Metamorpho as part of the Terrifics, a short-lived DC version of the Fantastic Four. Both versions are heroes, but are incredibly stoic and unfriendly, usually thinking in purely logical terms. Though the movie version does show visible panic when things get beyond his control, while the comic version usually remains stone-faced in even deathly dangerous situations. Honestly, overall, he's a pretty good adaptation of the comic character. The only reason he's not higher on this list is his connection to Maxwell Lord's Justice Gang instead of the Justice Society, and how very little we know about his backstory, like Hawkgirl leaving everything about him up in the air until we get confirmation. All it takes is for one a-hole to come along and just make up a bunch of crap for the details that weren't already set in stone, or outright retcon things. Anywho, at 18 we've got Joey. Both versions of Joey are the sons of Metamorpho. The movie version has a greenish appearance, while the comic version has a patchy-skinned appearance, much more like his father's. In the comics, Joey inherited his father's ability to transmute elements, though instead of doing so in his own body like his father, Joey's able to do so to other objects he touches, which is an incredibly dangerous ability for a baby to have, requiring him to be raised in a special nursery. In the movies, we don't see any evidence that he has these abilities, as he's held hostage by one of Luthor's men and is carried by Superman in some very high-stress situations, and nothing and no one is transmuted in that time. At 17, we come to Miss Teshmacher! Like Otis, Miss Teshmacher first appeared in the classic Richard Donner Superman as Lex's assistant, with Luthor iconically yelling her name in a loud, commanding tone when he needs her. When Lex leaves Superman to die with a chain of kryptonite around his neck, Eve saves him in the hopes that Superman will stop a missile Lex launched that is headed towards the city her mother lives in. In the new movie, she is never referred to as Miss Teshmacher, but usually by her first name, Eve. She is explicitly Lex's girlfriend, who absentmindedly poses for selfies while he enacts his schemes against Superman. Like the original, she's quite vapid and mainly prized by her looks, and she has a change of heart partway through, working against Lex. While the movie version was known for dressing in elaborate and revealing outfits, the new movie version dresses in still flamboyant but far more conservative outfits. Next up to 16, we've got Jorel and Laura Lorvan. Jorel and Laura are the parents of Superman in both the comics and the movie, who sent their son in a rocket to Earth to flee the destruction of their home planet, Krypton, which they perished alongside with. These two have had their looks changed throughout the history of DC more times than most any characters, with their entire wardrobes, hairstyles, and complete looks changing drastically, depending on the time period and artist. The movie versions don't really take inspiration from any of their comic outfits, but instead take inspiration from the white robes of the Donner Superman movie, which have also been adapted into comics from time to time as well. Usually, Jorel looks a lot like his adult son, but in the movie, he looks completely different. And Laura has been portrayed with pretty much every hair color at one point or another, so you really can't mess that up in the movie. Both of them deeply love their son, willing to give him up and sacrifice their own lives so he can live. They send him to Earth in a rocket Jorel designed so he can blend in among people who look like him and gain great abilities under Earth's yellow sun. In their comics, their motivation is usually just to allow him to survive, while in the movie, they decide to change them to encouraging their son to conquer the Earth when he got there and take a harem to spread his Kryptonian seed. Just when I thought we'd escaped the evil Superman trope that's been dominating pop culture too. Come on, man. Due to their role in his origin and inspiring his superhero persona and their love for his son, they get to remain this high despite that big deviation. Up to 15 now with Krypto. In the comics, Krypto has had many origins for arriving to Earth, from being a test dog launched in a rocket before Kal-El to being trapped in the Phantom Zone for years. But what matters is he arrives on Earth years later, becoming Superman's loyal dog. The movie version is not Superman's dog, but Supergirl's. Both versions wear a red cape and have white fur, but the movie version is a lot scruffier and a lot less well-trained, while the comic version has much slicker fur and is usually portrayed as a good boy. Both versions are loyal and help Superman fight against his enemies, becoming quite ferocious when their masters are threatened. Both versions have the same flight, super strength, and other abilities as Superman and Supergirl. Like Supergirl, we actually don't get to know all that much about Krypto's past yet or how he came to Earth, so he'll be further explored, I assume, in the upcoming Supergirl movie, and we'll rank him more deeply then. At 14, we reach Albert Tyler. In the movie, Albert Tyler has a very small role as the Attorney General during the meeting with representatives of the government and Lex Luthor. In the comics, he is also Attorney General. They look nothing similar, but I am impressed since they grabbed that name up either way, since he is a very, very small character in the comics. And in the comics, he is also the father of Dee Tyler, the second Phantom Lady, so here's hoping. At 13, we come to Sidney Happerson. In the comics, Sidney Happerson is a fiercely loyal scientist who works under Lex Luthor, who specializes in cloning technology. In the movie, he is one of the technicians working under Luthor in his schemes against Superman. We do not know if he has any connection to the cloning of Ultraman, but we do know one major difference. In the movie, Happerson tries to convince Lex to stop the rift destroying Metropolis, but reluctantly follows his orders to let it spread. Well, in the comics, after Superman talks Lex down from releasing demolition charges that will destroy the city, Happerson sets them off anyways. So, very, very different. But both versions look nearly identical and serve loyally under Lex Luthor. And now up to 12 we have Superman robots. In the comics, the Superman robots were robots who look exactly like Superman in order to help him maintain his secret identity. They've gone through many changes over the years, but none of that matters because the ones in this movie are not based on them. Instead, they're based on the Superman robots seen in the alternate universe comic All-Star Superman, where the robots do not resemble Superman, but are just robots with capes Superman created to help him maintain and safeguard the Fortress of Solitude. This is what they are in the movie as well, though they look very different, having a blue color instead of the silver metal look of the comics, and lacking the humanoid facial structures, though they do have similar short blue capes. And instead of having the same S emblem as Superman on their chests, they have numbers in the movie, matching the version seen in the much crappier animated adaptation of All-Star Superman. And while the comic versions have virtually no, besides the most minor, personalities, the movie versions have distinctive voices and personalities, basically appearing to be alive. At 11 we have Cat Grant. Cat Grant in the comics is the Gotham colonist for the Daily Planet. In the movies, she's also a journalist for the Planet, though I don't believe it was said that what she specializes in, though. Correct me if I'm remembering wrong. In the comics, she's had a difficult life, having left a bad relationship with her ex-husband before joining the Planet, and later losing her son to a malfunctioning, psychotic Toyman robot. Though we don't know any of the details of her personal life in the movies, I doubt that the Toyman robot murder was one of them. As with many civilian characters, her outfits change drastically over the years, often matching whatever's fashionable in the era. In the movie, I have no idea if this is what's in fashion. Any fashionistas out there will have to let me know, but her outfits in the movies are more provocative, as they often are in comics. She also has glasses, which is not something she's usually known for. Both versions can be a bit vapid, with the movie version talking with Lois about relationships while she's half watching important events on the news, and she does seem friendlier with Lois than she usually is in the comics as well. Like with all the Daily Planet staff, we sadly do not learn that much about her, so maybe she'll be expanded on in the future and we can see if she goes up or down. And now, finally, we enter the top 10 most well-adapted DC characters in Superman with Metamorpho. In the comics and movies, Metamorpho was Rex Mason. In the comics, he's an adventurer and soldier of fortune who was hired by Stagg Industries. When Simon Stagg learned Rex was dating his daughter, he sent him to retrieve the Orb of Ra, but also plotted to have him killed while retrieving it. After being knocked unconscious and left for dead, Mason was exposed to the radioactive properties of the orb and transformed into Metamorpho, the Element Man. Though often clashing with Stagg, due to the love for Stagg's daughter that they both share, they've been forced to reluctantly work together as well. The comic and movie versions look nearly identical, with their bodies separated into different elemental sections. Both versions have the ability to transmute their bodies into any element, as well as change themselves into incredibly bizarre shapes, including many right out of the comics. Both versions wear black shorts, but the comic versions are much shorter and tighter, while the movie versions are long and baggy. We don't learn a lot about him or his origin, but they're very different in personalities, with the movie version seeming very timid and unsure of himself, shocked when seeing a man die in front of him, and reluctant to break out of the prison he's been captured in. While the comic version's past as an adventurer makes him a lot more self-assured, experienced, and confident. And both versions later had a son named Joey, who was mutated due to Rex Mason's condition. At 9 we have Ron Troop. Ron Troop in the comics and movies is a reporter at the Daily Planet. The comic version was hired by the Daily Planet just as Superman was killed by Doomsday and Clark Kent disappeared in the chaos, with Ron being promoted to taking over most of Clark's responsibilities. In the movies, we know Superman lost his first battle at the very beginning of the film, telling us he has yet to die, and so letting us know that Ron likely joined in very different circumstances. Later on, he goes on to become the planet's lead political analyst. Both versions look very similar and have the distinct glasses he's always wearing. We know less about him than any of the other members of the Daily Planet staff in the movie, and the only reason he rates higher than Cat is his looks. At 8, we move up to Sapphire Stagg. In the comics, Sapphire Stagg is the beautiful daughter of corrupt industrialist Simon Stagg, who fell in love with his employee Rex Mason. Even after transforming into Metamorpho, she continued to love him despite her father's attempts to tear them apart. Eventually, they got married, and during a time Sapphire believed Metamorpho was dead, she gave birth to his son, though the two eventually reconnected. In the movie, we see Sapphire for a moment, watching the news with Metamorpho after he and their son had been freed by Superman. In the comics, she's usually portrayed as dressing to match the wealthy life her father provides her, while in the movie she seems a lot less well off with her husband. Since we see so many references to Stagg Industries, including the building Superman walks into after the revelation about his parents and articles at Lois's desk, we can at least half assume elements of her backstory are the same, but likely her and Rex have cut him and his money out of their life. Hopefully, though, we'll learn more someday in the future. At 7, we have the man himself, Superman! Both versions are Kal-El, sent by his parents to Earth to escape the destruction of Krypton and raised by Jonathan and Martha Kent on a farm in Kansas. Both versions are inspired by the values, seemingly in the movie, given to him by both sets of his parents to use the incredible powers Earth's yellow sun gives him to become the hero of Metropolis and the world, Superman. Both versions wear glasses to work as mild-mannered reporters at the Daily Planet under the identity of Clark Kent, and has a relationship with Lois Lane, who is one of the few people who knows he is Superman. Both versions have a Fortress of Solitude, a dog named Krypto, and a cousin who goes by Supergirl, though in the comics, Krypto is his dog, while in the movies he's watching him for his cousin while she's away. Both versions have the ability to fly, shoot lasers from his eyes, have super strength, borderline invulnerability, and many other powers. Many people have been saying Superman's weaker in this movie, but they're wrong. Superman has been portrayed at many different power levels across different eras of the comics, sometimes with enough godlike power to move entire planets from their orbit, and sometimes much less so. And though his movie version does seem less powerful than his heights in the comics, he is able to carry entire buildings, fly around the world at incredible speed, survive for long periods of time within the dimensional rift Mr. Terrific said would instantly kill anyone who entered it, and push himself back with super breath from a frickin' black hole. The main reason he may look weaker in the movie is that he spends half of it getting his ass whooped by Ultraman, who according to Lex is quite a bit stronger than Superman is. Their costumes are similar, but with some differences, combining the classic style costume and shorts with the cut of his New 52 redesign, with the major change being the addition of the alternate universe Kingdom Come style logo instead of his classic emblem. A lot of the superficial aspects are very similar, with the main difference being in his personality. The movie version is a lot more emotional than Superman is usually portrayed. In comics, he can have angry outbursts, but that's usually when he's pushed to his limits or has just witnessed a villain commit unspeakable atrocities. In the movie version, he is easily frustrated and visibly angry by relatively straightforward questions Lois asks him while interviewing Superman. He's also visibly angered by online smear campaigns against him. These kind of things can be very annoying to Superman, but usually he's much more able to keep his emotions in check, since he grew up needing to control every little action he takes, as the wrong finger twitch could just outright kill someone. He's a very calm and collected guy most of the time. Both versions care deeply about doing what's right and helping people, putting himself in harm's way without a second thought to protect the people of Metropolis. And though not as much as in the comics, he does inspire the other heroes around him to be better versions of themselves. And while the modern version of Superman does not recklessly charge into complex political affairs, especially in foreign countries, knowing that such actions would likely cause more harm than good, and that it's not his place to police the humanity. The classic original Golden Age Superman had no such concerns, jumping in to stop wars on multiple occasions, including in the country of Barovia as he does in the movie, though usually he'd chastise both sides instead of just one. In the comics, Superman is usually portrayed as incredibly smart and wise as well as strong, while in the movie he's not particularly intelligent, often not thinking problems through and not understanding the consequences of his actions. His Clark Kent persona is a mixture of the confident journalist version and the awkward everyman version that he's been portrayed as in different eras in comics. And while in the comics, Superman is a founding member of the Justice League alongside Batman, Wonder Woman, and others, in the movie version there currently is no Justice League, with a Justice Gang forming instead, of which Superman is not currently a member. And despite all the changes and similarities, there's one other major difference between the comic and movie versions. In the comics, though the time period changes as time moves in the real world, the arrival of Superman is usually seen as the dawn of the modern age of superheroes, with many of the most iconic heroes of the modern age coming into being around or just shortly after him. There have been superheroes here and there since the 1930s, but most of them retired or kept lower profiles until Superman appeared, shortly after forming the Justice League with some of the other greatest heroes of the modern era. In the movies, we don't know the full details of the history of the world, but we do see there are already heroes who are older than him, such as Peacemaker and Green Lantern, meaning they've likely been in operation since before he appeared on the scene. The feeling in the movie is that while Superman is an incredibly important hero, he may not be the hero of the world, instead just being another of many. While in the comics, Superman is definitively the main character of the DC universe, as DC would not have existed as a company if it weren't for his creation, with this represented as reality literally reforming around him with every major continuity upheaval in the comics. He also says dude one time, which is something that is very weird for me to hear come out of Superman's lips. Alright, well, now moving up to 6, we've got Guy Gardner. In the comics and movie, Guy Gardner is an abrasive, obnoxious, arrogant, and talkative human member of the Green Lantern Corps, with a ring granted by the Corps to police his sector of space. In the comics, Sector 2814. In the movie, unspecified. The ring allows him to create any construct he can imagine. In the comics, and assumedly the movie, fueled by his willpower, and powered by a lantern he must stick it in and recite his oath during. In the comics, when Green Lantern Abensur crashed to Earth and lay dying, his ring set out to find a suitable replacement as the Green Lantern of that sector. It found 2 suitable candidates, Hal Jordan and Guy Gardner, but since Jordan was closer, it picked him. Gardner was still set as the backup lantern should anything happen to Jordan, and after a long series of convoluted events, he eventually gained a ring of his own as well, finally becoming a Green Lantern. In the movie, we have no idea what his origin is, but since we already know there's going to be a Hal Jordan in this universe, we can assume it'll be at least somewhat similar. Both Hal and Guy are a lot older than they are in the comics, where everyone is around the same eternally 30-some years old, meaning that he likely operated as a hero before Superman even showed up, which is just weird to imagine. In the comics, he's a founding member of Justice League International, a group run by Maxwell Lord, while in the movies, he's a founding member of the Justice Gang, also run by Lord. Though, in the comics, he does not usually work with either Mr. Terrific or Hawkgirl. His relationship with Superman in the movie is the same as his relationship with most heroes in the comics, acting like he's a hotshot no matter who he's facing. Their costumes are completely different. In the comics, he wears his own unique version of the Green Lantern uniform, while in the movies he wears the standard Justice Gang uniforms, matching Mr. Terrific and Hawkgirl. And while he's had many different looks and hairstyles in the comics, his most infamous is his iconic bowl cut, which the movie adapts in most all of its glory. Hopefully, as we learn more about him, he can go up on the list, but as I've said before, you never know what kind of BS they're gonna pull. And now, here we are, the top 5 most well-adapted characters in Superman, starting with Steve Lombard. Both versions are sports journalists for the Daily Planet. Both are obnoxious towards Clark Kent and other co-workers, often picking on Kent for his perceived klutziness and lack of athleticism. He looks pretty much the same as his modern version in the comics with the same style of mustache, though in the movie he has brown hair instead of red. And though he's a bore and a jerk most of the time, when things get serious, he's willing to leap into action. In the movie, following the Daily Planet staff into Mr. Terrific's ship towards the end. One of the major differences, though, is that his tough guy persona in the movie isn't as loud as it is in the comics, with him serving as comic relief not so much because of his jerkish pranks and jokes with Clark backfiring like in the comics, but due to his more sensitive side coming out as a worry for his cat or fear of not having a seatbelt in times of chaos in the city. At 4, we come to Ma and Pa Kent. Both comic and movie versions of Ma and Pa Kent are Midwestern farmers who find an infant Kal-El and raise him with the good values needed to grow up and to become the hero Superman. In the comics, they were unable to have a child of their own, so they saw the boy as a blessing. And in the movies, I'd assume it's the same, but we can't know for sure. Like his Kryptonian parents, Ma and Pa have been portrayed a lot of different ways visually over the years, but on average they're portrayed as a kindly old couple living a quiet life on Kent farms. In the movie, they're a bit younger and represent more of the modern image of Middle America, with thicker accents and more rugged looks than usual, but they are still humble farmers living a quiet life far removed from the chaos of Metropolis and their son's life as Superman. In both versions, Kent Farm is somewhere Superman returns for Ma to take care of him if he's injured, and Pa to give him fatherly advice when he's morally troubled. And though the world sees him as a hero and godlike figure, his parents always keep him grounded by seeing him simply as their son. Though he was sent to Earth by Jorel and Laura, it's Clark's human parents in comics and the movie who give him the strong moral compass and values he follows every day as Superman. And let me add, it's nice to have had a Pa who doesn't consider if maybe Clark should let children drown. That doesn't apply to this ranking at all, but it is a nice thing. And now entering the top 3 most well-adapted Superman characters, starting with Perry White. Perry White is the editor-in-chief of the Daily Planet. He is often surly and belligerent to his workers, but is an honest and driven journalist who cares about the truth and wants the best out of his employees. Like the comics, he's an older man with graying hair and the build of someone who sits at a desk for a living. In the movie, he's seen wearing an outfit similar to his most well-known classic depiction in comics of a brown vest over a white shirt. He doesn't have his distinct cigar, but like most classically smoking characters, he doesn't have it as often in comics nowadays. He is unafraid to challenge even the most powerful people if his reporters come to him with a proven and backed up by facts and sources stories about him. And best of all, in the comics, Jimmy has a penchant for referring to him as Chief, which he hates, saying one of his main catchphrases in the comics and movies, "Don't call me Chief." Though we don't get a "Great Caesar's ghost" out of him, sadly. Really, the only difference between the two versions is that the movie version does not yell as loudly and the skin color. At 2, we come to Lex Luthor. Both comic and movie, Lex Luthor is a billionaire genius completely obsessed with winning a one-sided war against Superman. Both versions are CEOs of companies named after them. In the comics, it's LexCorp, while the movie version is Luthor Corp. We don't have the details of how the movie version built up his company, but both comic and movie version now use its considerable resources and technologies against Superman. Both present an outwards appearance of a benevolent businessman who wants what's best for the world, offering his services to the government in the movie to help safeguard the world against the unknown threat of a power like Superman's, and creating a variety of weapons and super soldiers to fight against him if given the opportunity to do so legally. Both versions plot elaborate schemes that lead to the deaths of many people, with the sole goal of getting the opportunity to try and kill Superman. in the movie secretly guiding an entire war that Superman intervenes in as an excuse to convince the government to allow him to kill Superman. Both versions are dangerous egomaniacs with delusions of grandeur, believing himself the world's savior and Superman to be its ultimate villain for how he holds humanity back from being forced to reach its true potential. He resents the people of Metropolis for having Superman as their idol they should look up to instead of recognizing how much more impressive his genius and accomplishments are, and takes every opportunity to turn public opinion against the Man of Steel. Both versions are completely bald and dress at the height of fashion and professionalism of whatever era he's in. And while both versions put on a mask of calm compassion for the world, underneath he's a raging narcissist, infuriated constantly by Superman's very existence in his world. One of the major differences is that while Miss Teshmacher was his assistant in the Donner movies, in the comics, when she's been adapted in, it's usually as an assistant or secretary, and not as an outright girlfriend as she is in the movie. He does create a clone of Superman in the comics, but while the movie version is a perfect clone with enhanced strength and decreased intelligence, the comic version had faulty genetics and developed into an imperfect duplicate dubbed Bizarro. He has no connection to Engineer's origin, but he does develop a Raptor armor like the one seen in the movie. But the comic version was deemed a failure and quickly decommissioned until the armor was stolen and repurposed. And though both comic and movie versions start as respected businessmen, his crimes are eventually exposed, leading to his arrest. Though if he's nearly as much like comic Luthor as he seems, he'll likely find some convoluted way to get back into the public's good graces. And though we still haven't seen Lex fighting Superman in his iconic power armor on film, his Raptor soldiers are colored in the distinct green and purple he's known for wearing, so it seems possible we could maybe finally see it next time. And now here we are. The #1 most well-adapted DC character in Superman is Lois Lane. Lois Lane is a passionate and dedicated journalist working for the Daily Planet. She is one of their top journalists, with her articles often being seen on the paper's front page and articles by her seen all throughout the movie. Though somewhat sardonic and cynical, she is one of Superman's biggest supporters, being one of the few in the movie to have absolutely no doubt whatsoever that he's exactly who he claims he is when the secrets of his parents are revealed in the movie. Though initially unaware of Superman's secret identity as her co-worker mild-mannered Clark Kent, she eventually learns who he is. In the movie, this happens a lot earlier than their time together in the comics, though we don't yet know the details. She works under Perry White and is colleagues with Steve Lombard, Cat Grant, Jimmy Olsen, and other members of the Daily Planet. She is fiercely independent, running straight into danger without hesitation, both for stories and in order to help Superman when he needs aid. And she is perfectly willing to write exposés about dangerous people like Lex Luthor, no matter the potential consequences, even knowing that in the movie he was willing to lock up an ex-girlfriend in his extra-dimensional prison for writing a negative blog post about him. She's a no-nonsense, straight-to-the-point kind of person, as we see in her interview with Superman in the movie, and her reaching out to the Justice Gang to enlist help in finding him after he's been taken by the government. While she's been portrayed with both black and brown hair in the comics, her hair is usually on the darker side, as it is in the movie. She looks pretty much exactly like she's been portrayed in the modern era, and though she changes her outfit through the years, and doesn't have any one distinct look, she is dressed pretty much the same as she usually dresses in the modern day, and both the comic and movie versions seem to have a fondness for purple in their wardrobe. As her backstory in the comics, she's the daughter of General Sam Lane, with her association with the military at a young age leading to some of her tough confidence. And though we don't know her backstory in the movie, nothing contradicts this for now. And while in her interview with Superman, he acts a lot more emotional and frustrated than Superman's usually shown to be, Lois maintains her professional, no-nonsense journalistic instincts, asking hard-hitting questions in an effort to get the story, even though she's talking to her boyfriend. And he's getting all upset. Her looks, her characterization, and her role in the world are all pretty much straight out of at least one era of the comics, with pretty much the only things not making her an even better adaptation being how little we know about her backstory, her connection to Superman and the Daily Planet in the early days, and the fact that there are decades of continuity to adapt, and they only add part of a 2-hour movie to showcase her in. So, there you go! It's a very close race, but Lois Lane wins by a hair, mostly due to incredibly minor changes for Lex Luthor that don't actually affect his character. But before we finish this already much longer than usual list, I need to add on a special honorable mention section for the heroes we see painted on a mural in the Hall of Justice. We never get a good look at it, and we never see the whole thing, only pieces, but it appears to chart the history of heroes across time and into the modern day. We only get a quick glimpse in the movie, and the only pictures I can find online are insanely blurry. But there are some characters I can still make up that I can confidently say are on there. meaning they exist or at some point existed within the continuity of this new DC universe. On the left of the mural, I could confidently spot Silent Knight, Black Pirate, and Super Chief, and who I believe may be Arion of Ancient Atlantis at the beginning, but I can't make that one out 100%. It also kind of looks like Amethyst, even though that would make no sense. These are all characters who existed in DC's distant past in the comics, and based on the backgrounds around them, it looks like they also exist within the same time periods in this movie version of the DCU. On the right, we have heroes who exist either in the recent past or maybe in the modern day, though they're harder for me to make out. I can confidently say I see Phantom Lady's legs, as well as Wildcat and Freedom Beast perched up on a rock. The other heroes are too blurry in the images I was able to see, but I'm excited to see some clearer images once the movie comes out or they release the full mural officially. I'm very interested to see that there is a planned history to the new movie DCU, as that is something that's always missing from these movies, since one of the most interesting parts of the DC universe is its incredibly fleshed out history. And though we know nothing about these characters yet, each of them gets a perfect score on the costume section of the 3Cs so far. I'm curious to see how they are if they're ever adapted further than this mural. And if you think you can make out any of the other characters we get a glimpse of on here, make sure to let me know below. This is of the utmost importance to me. And there we go. I went into this movie worried about the iconic characters of DC being completely changed and rewritten like so many of the Marvel characters in Guardians were. And though there were a couple who were massively changed, for the most part, I was pleasantly surprised by how much of an effort there was to adapt most of the important characters from at least one or two eras of their comic appearances. And it leaves me very interested and curious to see how things will go as we get more projects out of this new DCU. Whatever comes next, you can be sure I'll be there to nitpick the hell out of it. If you want to see that, make sure to hit that subscribe bell and hit a like, and leave a comment letting me know which characters you hope to see adapted in here, or if there's any incredibly obscure lore detail you think is worth mentioning about one of these characters that I didn't have time to talk about. And follow me on X/Twitter where I post random stuff, and I'll definitely post any other of those mural heroes I'm able to discern while looking at those blurry ass pictures. Anywho, this is a lot more characters than I expected this movie to adapt. I am exhausted. I need to absorb some solar energy to recharge. See ya!